Well, ladies and gentlemen, imagine this scenario. That it's 5 o'clock on a Wednesday morning and your day is just getting started. Your day, it's jam-packed, but at least you have everything nicely planned out with everything that you need to do before the day is over. And that's when your phone rings. And it turns out it's one of your employees. But unfortunately, they just came down with the flu last night, so they're not able to make it in for their shift today. The dreaded call-off. So, what do? Well, maybe you pick up your phone and start making your way, calling up and down your roster to try to find an available person to be able to fill in for that shift. But one call after another, you realize that there's no luck. And at this point, your stress is mounting, and you start to realize that you're running out of time and you're running out of people. So this means that if you're a retailer, your stores are not being serviced according to your standards, and your customers are beginning to take notice. If you're a CPG company, the stores, they're calling you. And because you don't have a merchandiser in there to service their stores, your sections are out of stock, you're losing sales, and your displays are slowly being pulled off of the floor. So let me stop there and ask you if this scenario sounds familiar to any of you. Or maybe it brings back some repressed memories. And if I can sum this up in one word, the situation would be called a nightmare. And if that is indeed a nightmare scenario, then our team is here today to talk about what the dream could look like. It is my honor to introduce you to Team Labor Pains. And we have Jake Cadwallader from State of the Brother Markets, Guy Paddock from P.F. Chang's, Stephen Randy from Safeway Albertsons, Joy Schwartzbaugh from Smart and Final, Lupita Talento from Northgate Markets, and I'm Jonathan Shen with Mondelez, and today we will be introducing you to the concept of the gig economy and the benefits of having an on-demand employee working for you. So that is a worker who's able to take a shift or a gig at a time that works best for them and when you need them the most. So if this concept of the gig economy sounds familiar, it's because it's nothing new. And chances are you participate in it already. You see, in 2008, Airbnb came out and completely shook up the hospitality industry. Uber came out in 2009 and did the exact same thing to the transportation industry. And so how did they do it? Well, they told you to do what you have been told your entire lives not to do. To get into a stranger's car. Going away for the weekend? Sure, go ahead, open up your home to complete strangers. So for us, so in order for these companies to disrupt their respective industries, it required a paradigm shift to do things the way that they have never been done before. And that is our ask of you today. Currently, 36% of the entire US workforce already participates in the gig economy, and that number is expected to increase to over 50% by the year 2025. So you'll find that the workplace of tomorrow and their preferences are changing, and we need to adapt as an industry. And as we adapt, you'll find that there is a $36 billion opportunity at our doorsteps. And so as we want to stay relevant, we need to change. And we need to change now.
Yes, change is near. Our workforce is definitely changing. By the year 2025, our workforce will be composed of 50% millennials and 30% Gen Z, making up just about 80% of our total workforce. Think about it. That's 80% in just 6 years. When you think about millennials and Gen Z, you think about just how picky they are with their shopping habits. Well, we're here to tell you today that they are just as picky when it comes to the workplace. Millennials want flexibility and they have grown up with technology or using technology their entire lives. They switch jobs very often, and they use technology, their smartphone, to access the internet and look for these jobs more than any other generation. Gen Z, they are all about work-life balance as well as technology. So as you can see, their preferences in the workforce are changing, and change is inevitable, so we really do need to act now. when we think about, so what can we do as an industry to cater to these generations and attract them to our industry? Well, we are here to tell you that the gig economy is a match. Take my friend Tony, for example. He is a millennial, and in the last year has switched jobs a few times. And when we ask him why, he talks about flexibility not being there. We are planning a vacation last week, and he just realized that as we were going through the cost of what the vacation was gonna cost, he wasn't gonna have enough money to cover for the vacation. So what does he do? He pulls out his phone and starts jotting down a couple of gigs that he could pick up in order to pay for that vacation. And in a matter of minutes, he had it all figured out. And that is what the gig economy brings to these new generations. The flexibility that they need and for them to be able to do the jobs they want at the time that is convenient for them and have the flexibility to do that. So we have given you a little glimpse of what the future workforce preferences are. What would joining one of these platforms look like?
Well, I can actually speak to that from personal experience. I actually downloaded one of these platforms and submitted my application. 20 minutes later, my background check comes through and I'm approved. I'm invited to join in one of their conference calls. I see there's a spot open the next day, 12 o'clock. Perfect, right during my lunch break. So during this call, I learned about each company's respective policies, what their timing standards are, as well as a rating system. The next step, I record a video myself talking about my own professional experience along with customer service experience, also to explain why I feel like I would be a great fit as an on-demand worker. So then the next step is I go on a ride along with one of the employees on the platform, and they train me just exactly as they would train anybody else. I was amazed at how quickly an industry outsider like myself could be brought up to speed and learn to merchandise a full pallet. Then I complete a couple of the online certifications to get approved, and I'm ready to go. I'm ready to pick up one of these shifts and start making some money, start earning money. Now, let's revisit that nightmare scenario that we were talking about earlier. If you're a retailer, you're stressed from those last-minute call-offs, somebody's sick. If you're a merchandiser, you're just missing opportunities, and it's ad week, and you just...
You know, Guy, I think we've heard a lot about that nightmare. But we also promised to talk about what the dream could look like.
You're right, Jonathan. Just what could that dream look like?
So the dream by using one of these on-demand platforms could look as easy as 3 simple steps. So let's go back to that call scenario. I'll assume the role of the employer and tell you that step 1 would be to pick up my phone and simply post the shift.
And I get that notification on my phone, there's a shift available, and I see the timing works for me, so I go ahead and pick it up.
Step 2, I get a notification that my shift has been filled.
I get a priority because I come with a high rating. Also, I've done the work before.
And the third and final step is now that I see that the work is done, I have the opportunity to rate and give overall comments for Guy's performance.
And those high ratings can actually unlock more jobs for me in the future. And I can also rate the place where I've been working. In just one click, I became one of the 57 million people on the gig economy.
And in one click, I was able to supplement my existing workforce and be at ease, knowing that my and my customers' needs were being met.
As you can see, the gig economy is ready for the food industry.
And the question is the food industry ready for the gig economy?
Let's address a few of the elephants in the room and ask ourselves, why wouldn't you want this? Well, how about your company's culture? If you're sitting here thinking, isn't bringing in an on-demand employee only going to help to degrade my company's culture? Well, I would answer that question with another question and say, but isn't that what's happening now already? I mean, think about it. With all the number of vendors that we have working in our stores every day, servicing our shelves, working side by side with our employees, and most importantly, interacting face-to-face with our customers, it's already happening. And let's not forget about the ridiculously high turnover our industry faces every day. You know that's not good for your company's culture either. The beauty of an on-demand employee is that they can be trained specific to the needs of your company, tailored by you. What about the unions? It's a big elephant in the room, isn't it? In fact, I can practically hear your thoughts now that there's no way I or the unions would allow a non-union employee to work in my union company. Or the opposite, that there's no way I would allow a union employee to work in my non-union company. And the reality is, as it sits today, you're right. However, by changing our mindset, we're able to leverage some of our challenges and barriers into opportunities. And for the union companies, it's about working side by side with the unions to help renegotiate our current collective bargaining agreement to be able to include on-demand employees. And for the non-union companies, it's as simple as something that we're already doing every day with all the numerous DSD vendors we have working for us. What we're suggesting may be a little bit risky, but we would argue that the real risk is in doing nothing, that the true danger lies in where we're all sitting today, floating, adrift, fingers crossed, hoping that we're going to be able to write our schedules, hoping that we're going to be able to fill this pipeline full of talented and hardworking employees, hoping that we're going to be able to service our customers as we always have. But hope is not a strategy. You've heard how by changing our mindset, we're able to leverage some of our challenges and barriers into opportunities. Let's take a look at what some of the financial opportunities are.
The food industry is currently averaging a 60% turnover. 90% of that turnover is coming from our entry and mid-level positions. Collectively, as an industry, we're investing $4.5 billion annually into recruiting, hiring, and training these entry and mid-level positions. The cold hard truth is that our industry is not as attractive as it once was. And for the majority of our employees, we're no longer seen as a career. So let's take a look at the roots of the problem. Our industry is not easy work. Year after year, we increase our productivity standards with a less experienced workforce. This is adding additional responsibilities in a higher stress environment. Our wages are not as competitive as some of the more attractive industries, such as the IT or medical fields. The hours that we're asking our employees to work are not attractive. In fact, if you look at our customer traffic patterns, they're nearly the complete opposite of the times our employees want to work. When our employees are working, their families are spending times with their families. They're having dinners. They're enjoying a Saturday afternoon barbecue. Work-life balance has been identified as a key priority amongst millennials and Gen Z employees, and we're doing our best to accommodate this, but at what cost? Unemployment rates are at an all-time low, and we're all competing ferociously to be able to staff our stores with the most qualified employees, oftentimes finding ourselves recruiting and headhunting from local competitors, offering higher wages and better hours. Rather than working together to find a solution to the problem, we continue to sabotage each other. And this is something that absolutely must stop if we're going to survive. Our industry is composed of approximately 70,000 establishments. And we estimate that on average, our stores are short 6 hours in labor daily. Whether this be from our employees not showing up to work their scheduled shifts, or our directors simply not being able to staff to the needs of the customer. I want you all to imagine that you had access to a pool of on-demand employees, and you were able to fill in your scheduling void with this on-demand employee. Now, I want you all to imagine that this on-demand employee was able to generate $240 in sales per each hour worked. If we were able to accomplish that number, which is our industry average sales per labor hour, we would be generating an additional $36 billion in sales for our industry. And if you were to break that down on a store-by-store basis, we would be looking at $520,000 in additional sales for each store in our industry. That's almost a full additional week of sales for every store out there. Now, $36 billion, that sounds like a lot of money, and it is. But I want you all to imagine what your stores have looked like on a Friday afternoon at 5 p.m. when your store director was only able to schedule to 90% of the customer's need, and you had 2 call-outs. Your grocery aisles are littered with out-of-stocks. Your full-service departments are understaffed and underproduced. Your checkout lines are extending down the grocery aisles, and one of your most regular customers is walking out the front door having abandoned a full shopping cart of groceries. And as they're walking out, they're claiming, "This is the last time I'm returning to your store because I'm tired of dealing with the same issues week after week." The on-demand employee will give us the ability to fill in these scheduling voids and move us this much closer to executing the perfect schedule. But now let's elaborate a little bit more on the benefits an on-demand employee can bring to our industry.
So as employers, we can look forward to the additional cost savings from reducing tasks like onboarding, training, and terminations. We all know how much time and effort goes into these tasks, and if we reduce them, we could reallocate this time. Imagine if we could walk our stores more or develop customer relationships a little bit further. The on-demand workforce also comes with a built-in reputation score, which allows us to get to know who we're bringing in our stores a little bit better. Currently, our onboarding process is based off of an application and a short interview. Now we'll be able to review comments about previous work performed as well as scores. An additional benefit is the fact that we'll be able to effectively staff our stores, not just for the increase of sales, but for the peace of mind that comes with having the right person in the right place at the right time. No longer will we have to live in fear of restricted schedules and call-offs. Employers are not the only ones who will be benefiting, though. Our employees will now have access to benefits that both improve their quality of life as well as their skill development. Flexibility is becoming one of the most demanded necessities at work. We've all heard the term work-life balance, and similarly, we've all pretty much laughed at it. But with the on-demand workforce, it makes the balance a reality. It also allows for our associates to have a better sense of financial wellness. Let's say one of our workers is $50 short on rent. No worries. There's a shift at Smart & Final they can pick up to cover it. What about if this worker has an unexpected trip to urgent care and needs to pick up a prescription? They've got it covered. Mondelez has a few gigs they can pick up during the week in the exact amount needed. The on-demand platform attracts workers that would typically not give the food industry a second glance as well. By giving these workers an introduction to our companies, we give them a chance to figure out if the food industry is indeed the right industry for them. And with the flood of millennials and Gen Z in the upcoming years, being a right fit is more crucial than ever. I'd like to go back to the reputation score, because this doesn't just benefit employers. Our employees will be able to develop and maintain a reputation that they can take with them throughout the industry and beyond. By marrying work performance with a rating score, it incentivizes associates to develop critical skills like customer service, communication, and decision-making, which are all transferable and highly sought-after skills. To me, it sounds like this is a win-win for both.
So allow me to help tie all this together here. So you've heard about the gig economy and on-demand employees and how that can be a perfect fit for our industry. You've heard about the benefits, you've seen the staggering cost savings, and the mountain of sales opportunities all lying at our feet, centered around allowing an on-demand employee to work for you. And finally, you've heard how by changing our mindset a little bit, we're able to leverage some of our challenges and barriers into opportunities. But ladies and gentlemen, the bottom line is simple, that knowing what we know now to do nothing is unacceptable. That to let this wave of talented, hard-working employees pass us by only helps to solidify the fact that our industry is stagnant. And we know in this rapidly changing environment that if we're not moving forward, we're being left behind. And folks, this does not look like a room full of people who's okay being left behind. We ask you today to shift your paradigm, to change your mindset, to be open-minded in allowing an on-demand employee to work for your company. On behalf of Team Labor Pains, we thank you so much for your time. We'd now like to open up the floor for any questions.
Great presentation, by the way, everyone. I did have a question to get a little bit more into the union problem that you brought up for some of the employers in this room. In the course of your research, did you find any companies that collaborated with unions and were able to bring on gig workers in traditionally union environments?
We haven't come across any particular company that has got on board with the platform that we're suggesting. We do know that there is current legislation through the state of California brought on by the Dynamax group called the predictive labor legislation. And so that's essentially saying that the employer is obligated to post a schedule 14 days in advance and can be charged a penalty by changing that schedule up to 5 days, within 5 days notice. And so we believe that that our platform will really help to lend to one of the solutions for that legislation. We haven't necessarily come across any company that's been able to sort of do what we're suggesting, though.
So great presentation again. Question on average hourly rates, and when it comes to total rewards packages for gig workers, did you do any kind of comparison between a regular employee, their total rewards package, versus gig employee worker, and what that will cost to the employer?
So I can speak to that as well. So currently there's existing platforms. So say for example, you have your own, be it part-time or full-time employee, and then who's making, let's say, a hypothetical $17 per hour for either in-store or merchandising. And then for a gig employee, they would be paid essentially a premium, say, again, hypothetically about $4 extra. So the $4 extra is actually a more enticing hourly rate. And so, of course, you could then ask the question, okay, well, does my own employees, are they going to be missing out on what this, what the premium, the price premium they're getting paid? But of course, as you are a third-party on-demand employee, you're not getting paid out the benefits. You're not covered by any sort of, full-time or benefits and the like. And additionally, I think from an hours perspective, an on-demand employee would be available for the hours that are needed, whereas if you were a regular part-time or full-time employee, you would be almost guaranteed some of those hours. So I think the pricing would be a little different probably per company, but there is going to be that sort of premium that you would pay essentially. But our argument would hopefully be that the cost of hiring and onboarding and training and even terminating employees who just aren't a good fit, you would save on all those costs, and those would be embedded into potentially the premium that you would pay for an on-demand employee.